This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
The World Health Organization now warns there may be no sure way of combating the coronavirus despite advancements in vaccines development. Authorities in Kenya and Somalia laid down elaborate airport safety measures as more countries resume international flights. And we'll look at the amazing treasures from ancient Africa in our new special series, Made in Africa. Hello and thank you for joining us on Africa Live. I am Peninah Karibe. In studio with me with the business headlines is Uche.
Thank you, Peninah. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Nigeria extends over $41 million in credit to its maize farmers. And South Africa postpones a plan to implement a universal basic income grant to March next year. Of course, more on that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. And we begin in Geneva, from where the World Health Organization is warning that despite strong hopes for vaccines development, there may never be a proven containment measure for the coronavirus pandemic. So far, more than 18 million people have been diagnosed with the disease worldwide, and nearly 700,000 have died. CGTN's Daniela Pearson has more details.
The World Health Organization is urging all nations to rigorously enforce health measures against the coronavirus pandemic. This includes the wearing of masks, physical distancing, hand washing, and continued testing.
A number of vaccines are now in phase 3 clinical trials, and we all hope to have a number of effective vaccines that can help prevent people from infection. However, there is no silver bullet at the moment, and there might never be. For now, stopping outbreaks comes down to the basics of public health and disease control: testing, isolating and treating patients, and tracing and quarantining their contacts.
Countries like Brazil and India have some of the highest transmission rates. They're also among those urging for more public vigilance.
Again, the potential for this disease to spread quickly in overcrowded urban areas and in poorly served rural areas is always there, and India will obviously have to keep up a very strong and sustained effort to both prevent the spread of the disease and to treat those who fall ill.
The WHO has plans for a group of Chinese and international experts to study the emergence of COVID-19. It's following the efforts of an earlier team deployed last month.
The WHO advanced team that traveled to China has now concluded their mission to lay the groundwork for further joint efforts to identify the virus origins. As a result of these efforts, WHO and Chinese experts have drafted the terms of reference for the studies and program of work for an international team led by WHO.
The focus at the start of the global pandemic was ramping up COVID-19 testing capacity. Several months in, many countries are now streamlining the process to improve response efforts.
If we have results back in 4 or 5 days, even longer, that is not going to help us. So the fact that we have rapid tests that are in development, and we should say it is really, again, incredible the amount of tests that are being developed, and the fact that we have rapid tests that are being developed, this is a positive thing, and this will help control efforts.
The World Health Organization says that the coronavirus is the biggest global health emergency it's experienced. However, the hunt for a vaccine is picking up pace, with a number of clinical trials in their final stages. Daniela Pearson, CGTN.
A massive campaign has been rolling out across Ethiopia to combat the coronavirus pandemic. The launch was announced late on Saturday by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. According to the campaign program, the country will test 200,000 people for the virus in the coming 2 weeks. Depending on the results, authorities will decide on whether to resume in-person schooling. Increasing testing is also expected to aid in decision-making with regard to prevention and control measures. Authorities say that the nation is now better equipped to deal with the outbreak. Ethiopia has set up 54 quarantine facilities across the country and locally produces hand sanitizer. Ethiopia has so far confirmed more than 19,000 coronavirus cases and nearly 8,000 recoveries. Elsewhere, Britain is set to roll out millions of COVID-19 tests capable of detecting the virus within 90 minutes. The country's health minister, Matt Hancock, says the tests will be rolled out as Britain prepares to face the pandemic in winter. The Lampur and DNA nudge tests do not need to be administered by a health professional. The developments come after criticism that there has not been enough testing, especially in nursing homes.
Well, this is a big step forward in terms of how quickly we're going to be able to get tests turned around and also how widespread we can make tests. We're on track to deliver 500,000 tests a day by the end of October, but new technologies like these two will help us to accelerate that. These technologies which deliver these rapid turnaround tests will mean that we can expand testing capacity further and into settings where, for instance, in schools currently we have survey testing, so we have some testing that would be able to be expanded, but also looking across the community where we want to test people who don't have symptoms to find out where the virus is.
Kenya's Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has resumed operations after a 4-month shutdown due to COVID-19. Authorities say they have new measures in place to ensure passenger and staff safety. So what can one expect at the airport now? Robert Nagila finds out.
First, authorities say for passengers departing from Kenya,
check on the protocols that they are required to fulfill in their destination countries.
Your temperature will be recorded and your travel documents verified before accessing the terminal. So as soon as you walk into the terminal, there's a security check. Now, in recent years, Jomo Kenyatta International Airport has enhanced its security. So I'm sure that's my microphone, but yeah, you good? Thank you. So expect a thorough security check and patience is required.
We are encouraging them to come to the airport at least 3 hours before their flight.
This is mainly due to the new measures in place against COVID-19. Authorities have put sanitation points throughout the airport. There are at least 300 automated sanitation points in the facility.
You can actually use the kiosks for check-in as opposed to, interacting with the check-in officials. But of course, you can also interact with them at the check-in counters, but there is a screen that protects you or separates you from them. We are urging people to check in online.
Physical distancing signs are clearly displayed throughout the airport, and a face mask is mandatory. Once check-in is complete, it's a short distance to the immigration area. So once you're done with immigration, there's another security check that awaits you. So the good thing about Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, it's one of the more modern airports across the continent, and they've tried to make movement much, much easier. Once you're through with security, you can access restaurants, duty-free shops, and your boarding gate, where seats are clearly spaced out. However, expect random security checks throughout the airport. For those arriving at the airport,
COVID certificate.
Your temperature will be recorded and one must fill a questionnaire for contact tracing purposes. A curfew is in force, so if you leave the airport between 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., keep your boarding pass and passport nearby if stopped by police. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Neighboring Somalia has also reopened its skies to incoming international flights after shutdown back in March due to COVID-19. The move is part of several other steps to ease restrictions and reopen the country's economy. The Somali Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation, Mohammed Abdullahi Salat, says all necessary measures have been taken to avoid further spread of the disease. Incoming travelers are expected to have a negative COVID-19 certificate. The test should show that it was done within the past 96 hours prior to traveling.
Close to 5 months now, and we cannot keep the country closed for so long if there's no scientific reasons. Since the numbers are down, the neighboring countries, the international destinations, most of them are open now with some restrictions. We were prompted by Ministry of Health and others to reconsider the suspension of flights. So now we have considered looking at from the economic point of view, as well as from the health point of view, the situations are prompting us to reconsider our position, and we did.
The biggest challenge of the restriction was an economic decline. It was not political. We now expect ease since the country resumed its international flights. We hope that the price of the commodities will go down. We congratulate the government on the step to reopen international flights in Somalia. The country can recover from the economic losses it encountered. Of course, that was a life-saving mission.
The head of TikTok's parent company doesn't want to sell the popular short video app, but says he must comply with any U.S. order. The CEO of Beijing-based ByteDance said in a letter to employees the company is exploring all possibilities to resolve its issues in the U.S., where TikTok has as many as 80 million active users. Jiang Yiming stressed the company is private and is open to adopting technical solutions to allay fears. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to ban the popular app over national security concerns. ByteDance denies those accusations, but noted that American regulators are calling for it to sell off its U.S. operations. American tech giant Microsoft says it is in negotiations to acquire the app. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry is accusing Washington of discriminating against Chinese firms.
The U.S. has generalized the concept of national security and has presumed Chinese companies guilty without any proof and issued threats. This goes against market economy principles. It has also exposed their hypocrisy with regards to their claims of safeguarding fairness and freedom. Their actions violate World Trade Organization principles of openness, transparency, and non-discrimination. We oppose this. We urge the U.S. to provide foreign businesses with an environment that is open, fair, and non-discriminatory. Stop politicizing economic issues or using national security as excuses for discrimination.
CGTN's Wei Ling Tang got some reaction from users in China, where the Chinese version of TikTok also enjoys wide popularity.
As the TikTok community went hysterical over news of a possible ban in the United States, the local community in China joins in on the debate too. From deeming this nothing to do with national security and exclaiming what the US is doing is a form of robbing in the name of democracy, users on Chinese social media platform Weibo are largely against this move by the US. Meanwhile, on the ground in China,
I think this is a move to block the exposure of people in America, because you see we in China access the app too. It's clear America is trying to suppress China because we have seen growing at a faster pace. That said, while I feel China is much stronger now, it is still not as strong as America to be able to place such measures on another country.
Because we are now a culturally confident country, this spells trouble for the U.S. I feel this move holds no grounds for blame. It aims to prevent the export of Chinese culture and impedes the cultural exchanges between China and the U.S. I currently use a virtual private network to access some overseas sites, but if I have to use a VPN just to access TikTok in the future, I wouldn't use the app as much anymore.
in the meantime, foreigners dismissed concerns about their data privacy, stating in today's borderless world, they reveal data on other social media platforms too.
I think that it's not right. I prefer to use TikTok, and I think that everyone is going to use TikTok in US still now.
Why is it not right?
Because it's an app that is funny, and I don't think that is China spy with TikTok.
The United States ranks among the top 3 countries where TikTok has been downloaded the most. At 165 million app installations, the US accounts for 8.2% of the social media platform's over 2 billion downloads as of April 2020. According to research firm Sensor Tower, user spending from the US accounted for an even larger percentage at 19%. Professor Liu Chunsheng from the Beijing-based Central University of Finance and Economics told CGTN, perhaps the best solution for ByteDance now is to sell its entire US assets and platforms to US companies and/or investors. As the Chinese tech giant has invested a lot of time and money to penetrate the US market, he believes reaping something from a sale would be better than nothing. Meanwhile, TikTok users have already started directing their fans to their other social media platforms, such as Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Weilin Tam, CGTN, Beijing.
This is Africa Live. Time for us to take a quick break. Here's what's still ahead. We tell you why many Ethiopians were out in the streets amid renewed talks over the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. And we'll look at the amazing treasures from ancient Africa in our new special series, Made in Africa.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Ethiopians have been celebrating progress in the construction of the country's dam on the Blue Nile River. Sunday's celebration came after Ethiopian officials announced that the first stage of filling the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam's reservoir has been achieved due to heavy rains. Tens of thousands of residents flooded the streets of the capital Addis Ababa to celebrate in an event dubbed One Voice for Our Dam.
Ethiopia's Deputy Prime Minister Demeke Mekonnen called on the public to rally behind the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam and support the completion of its construction. Hashtags like It's My Dam, Ethiopian Nile Rights and God trended among Ethiopian social media users. And celebrations over the filling of the dam were not just in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa. Similar events were also held in other cities in Ethiopia.
We came out here to celebrate the filling of our dam. I don't have words to explain to you how happy I am. We really support the government and I want to show our solidarity. So far we have used charcoal to bake our bread, but after this we will use electricity.
We are so excited for two reasons today. First, the most important is the filling of the Nile Dam. It is essential for us, and secondly, we're celebrating this together with our wedding.
Ethiopia says the dam will provide electricity to millions of its nearly 110 million citizens and help them out of poverty. Once completed, the dam would also make Ethiopia a major power exporter. Chaumwono, CGTN.
Earlier, we spoke to our correspondents in Egypt and Ethiopia for more insights into the developments. Here's Adel Mahri from Ras Sedr in Egypt and Gurum Chala in the capital of Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. Let's listen in.
Egypt is still persisting to certain forms of guidelines and requests that is holding strong to. Cairo understands that the first phase that Ethiopia is celebrating, as we've seen in the last report, has been more or less due to the current status, the geographic status of the heavy rains that has supported that. At least this is the official announcement from Addis Ababa, but Cairo fears that this will not be the case. In the recent months, we've been seeing media reports from both countries about resorting to military intervention, the power of the Ethiopian army or the power of Egyptian army. And the president said, he warned actually last week that this is a message to the public opinion and such a tone must not be tolerated. And therefore he, for the first time, has put an end to all of these speculations, confirming that any military intervention is not an option. El-Sisi stresses that the only way throughout this crisis is through negotiations and through the three countries to support each other's development and refrain from any harm that will fall on the people of the three nations. And that's the key here. Now, what will happen? The next round of talk is quite crucial. It's the beginning of another round with hopes to reach an agreement this time. Luckily, the three nations have much more time than the tight framework than they had right before Ethiopia's ultimatum to fill in July, and therefore there is plenty of negotiations to finalize and reach an agreement.
Well, when it comes to negotiations, compromise may not be the right word, Peninah, for this sort of talks going on between the three countries, Ethiopia, Egypt, and Sudan. Rather, this negotiation should be based on a win-win understanding of using this Nile resource together without harming one another. Now, harm could be defined according to the negotiators here in two terms. One, as Egypt claims, it could be by minimizing the watershed that is going to Egypt, which is going to affect its agriculture sector, and in general terms, the economy itself and the livelihood. On the other side, also, if a country like Ethiopia, for instance, is not using its water resource for a longer time, harm is also going to be there. So what is the solution? And I was speaking to the Minister of Water, Irrigation and Energy of the country, and he was telling me, we are hoping that the talks are going to start very soon in the coming few days, and it is going to be a negotiation based on a win-win understanding. Ethiopia, time and again, has said it, and he has also reiterated his stand that there is no way that Ethiopia is planning or even in the slightest terms to affect Egypt's situation. It's a people, because remember, this Grand Renaissance Dam is going to be constructed and it is going to be completed to serve Ethiopian people, and there is no logic that is going to be there to affect other people who are going to live in Egypt or Sudan. So negotiation is the word. May not be compromised. Ethiopia wants to give and take in this scenario. For instance, in the filling of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam from 5 to 7 years, Egypt's proposal is a bit higher. They might meet somewhere in the middle. We don't know, but negotiations are going to continue. But one thing I can assure you is that Ethiopia will not allow something that is going to affect the benefits of its people for a longer run, or even the management of the Grand Renaissance Dam itself involving the third party. In this case could be Egypt or Sudan, because this is solely owned by Ethiopia and Ethiopians. That's what we have heard, Peninah.
The African Union mission in Somalia has a new force commander. Lieutenant General Diomede Ndegeya from Burundi replaces Ethiopia's Lieutenant General Tigabu Yilma. The incoming General Ndegeya will head the AMISOM teams from Burundi, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya and Uganda. His career spans more than 38 years, and he previously served in Somalia from 2007 to 2009, where he was part of the Burundi National Defense Forces. Later in 2012, he was part of a reconnaissance mission to the Bay and Bakul regions of Somalia. Prior to his new position, he was working as a senior advisor to Burundi's defense minister. He is also a published writer focusing on peacekeeping missions in Africa and the professionalization of the Burundi National Defense Forces. The new AMISOM chief was received at Mogadishu's International Airport by senior AMISOM military officers.
I'm coming to help Africa, to help Somalia, our brothers. I was been here maybe 5 or 6 times before, from 2007 to 2012.
The Egyptian Coptic Church has resumed its services after more than 4 months of closure. New restrictions limit the number of worshippers at churches, so the church has launched an app for people to book their slots. Here's Adel Mahri with the details.
Church bells in Egypt ring with joy. They're finally opening their doors after months of lockdown because of the COVID-19 pandemic. Loris Fouad is a Girl Scout at this Cairo church. She rushed to be among the first to attend this first service since March.
I prayed for the world to open up safely, Sunday schools to return. I'm like a child, very happy that churches are open. Many of my friends and relatives got infected. I got quarantined because of that, so I pray all this gets over soon.
Inside the church, distancing is strictly imposed. 1 person per bench. Face masks must be put on all the time. The only exception is during communions. Despite these restrictions to worshippers' comfort, Ahdi Malti extends his arms in gratitude that the church service is back.
I was desperate for churches to open.
I miss having the ability to come anytime. Today, I feel great. That's the peak of my happiness in a long time. It's good to be back. It's good to see people gathering for a prayer. I can now attend prayers, confessions, and communions.
The Egyptian Coptic Church is launching a very organized reopening to all its churches. It developed a mobile application through which worshippers can book their prayer time to avoid overcrowding.
Churches are now open, but there's a lot of people. So to guarantee that everybody gets a chance to attend church, we said roughly every person could come once a month. That is to avoid having some people come 2 or 3 times a month, while others do not get a chance to find a place.
There is a saying in Egypt, people don't know the value of what they have until it's gone. The pandemic has many people across the world realizing that. Egyptian mosques opened last month, but the main Friday prayer is still on hold. Adil Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Further afield, churchgoers in the Mexican city of Cuernavaca now attend religious services at a drive-in cinema in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's Wilkis Tanyaba with that story.
For 2 Sundays, the Cuernavaca Diocese in Mexico has celebrated Mass at a drive-in cinema.
Amen.
Here, Catholic faithful have the chance to attend the services from the safety of their cars.
When the idea of this Mass took place, people celebrated because now many people can receive the sacramental communion. And participating here of the Eucharist in your car is a very sought-after communion.
Safety measures such as temperature checks are in place on arrival for attendees. The congregation also has the option of listening to the service through their car radios.
This is the most important activity of all, to be here with Christ. I think risking it all for him is worth it.
Churches in Mexico are now able to reopen their doors. However, many people still feel more comfortable attending services where it is easier to maintain physical distance.
Taking into account all these risks, and in this context, we also seek the way to take care of our congregation. Take care of anybody coming here, and the event of Come to Mass in your car has precisely this sense, to take care of all people and that they undergo the least risk possible.
Faithful can now attend the drive-in Mass either by contacting the diocese to receive a registration code or arrive early to see if spaces are available. Wilkis Anyabo, CGTN.
Let's now remind you of our top stories. The World Health Organization is warning that despite strong hopes in vaccines development, there may never be a proven containment measure for the coronavirus pandemic. So far, more than 18 million people have been infected worldwide and nearly 700,000 have died. Authorities in Kenya and Somalia have laid down airport safety measures as more countries resume international flights. Passengers in Kenya are being urged to go to the airport at least 3 hours before their flight. In Somalia, arriving travelers are expected to have a negative COVID-19 certificate for a test done within the past 96 hours prior to traveling. And the CEO of Beijing-based ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, says it doesn't want to sell the popular short video app, but he must comply with any U.S. order. American President Donald Trump has threatened to ban the popular app over national security concerns. ByteDance denies those accusations. Well, let's now catch up with the day's business news. We cross over to Ucha for the latest.
Thanks, Peninah. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Nigeria extends over $41 million in credit to its maize farmers. And South Africa postpones a plan to implement a universal basic income grant to March next year.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's start off in Nigeria. The country's central bank has issued a $41.2 million credit facility to its maize farmers. Now, this comes after the bank placed a ban on maize importation in order to boost local production. Here's Kelechi Emekalam with the details.
Another planting season for maize farmer Abubakar Sabitu. He has spent the past 2 decades cultivating maize, a staple food widely consumed in Nigeria. But lots of farmers like himself haven't enjoyed favorable yields and sales. Besides contending with imports, financing has been a major challenge. Now the Apex Bank's ban on maize importation and its $41.2 million credit facility to maize farmers would help boost production.
The challenges I face every farming season is access to fertilizer. Because every year we farm, we have to budget for fertilizer. But most years, there's always a hike in the price, and it affects our calculation due to the price differences. This makes us to always seek financial help, and in some cases, the fertilizer is not readily available.
If part of this money will be used to acquire tractors and some machines that will make our work easier and encourage us to do more, we will go a long way. If I was farming 1 hectare and now I have these inputs available, I can farm up to 10 hectares.
According to Nigeria's Bureau of Statistics, maize seed import alone was over $4.6 million in the first quarter of 2019. And that's excluding other byproducts from maize running into millions of dollars. The Apex Bank hopes to stimulate economic recovery, safeguard rural livelihoods, and increase job opportunities affected by the COVID-19 pandemic.
It's the right step in the right direction. And don't forget, it's only for this season. You also go to have dry season farmers. There are also high exportable ones that we're already exporting, like sesame seed, shea butter, ginger. Those we are not even mentioned, but we are exporting those. So they require equal attention. So these ones are where Nigeria has significant comparative advantage compared to other African countries. And so we need to put resources behind those.
About 40,000 maize farmers will access the credit facility. Among other interventions, the funds would go into agro inputs like fertilizers, seeds, and agrochemicals. The farmers are expected to double their output this year, as well as provide 1.5 million metric tons of maize for animal feed. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And heading to South Africa now, the government says it will not implement a universal basic income grant until March next year. Now, this, of course, rolls back the pledge to have the policy ready by October. An emergency unemployment grant of $21 as well as top-ups to existing child and old age grants were introduced earlier this year amidst the coronavirus lockdown. The grant is expected to expire in October, but the government says it is unrealistic to expect a universal basic income grant by the end of the period. Now, the World Bank says the economic crisis caused by the coronavirus has pushed for the consideration of the grant, despite no country paying out an unconditional universal basic income. It adds that a temporary basic income for the world's poorest 2.7 billion people could help to slow the spread of the virus. And still in the country, the automotive market in South Africa is slowly recovering. Automakers and dealerships were forced to close at the end of March when South Africa went into a hard lockdown. While manufacturers reopened in mid-May, industry experts are saying it's still going to be a while before a full recovery. Now, the sales market is, however, seeing a speedier turnaround. Here's Sumitra Naidu with more.
The automotive industry in South Africa contributes over 7% to GDP. The sector also accounts for almost 500,000 jobs, but the industry has been taking strain due to the poor state of the economy. COVID-19 has added to the industry's woes.
The automotive sector arguably is the only success case of a proactive industrial strategy in South Africa in the last generation. The sector undoubtedly is our single most value-added export. So it's an industry with high IP, significant levels of FDI that is attractive to the country.
Car dealerships reopened in May, but people were either too scared to go out or had no money to look at a new purchase. Vehicle sales in May fell 68%.
In March, for an example, we've seen a 98% drop of vehicle sales, particularly the domestic vehicle sales in the country compared to the previous corresponding period. And that number is beginning to pick up again because obviously the economy is back online and we are able now to trade as much as possible.
While the domestic market is expected to recover this year, the export market, which fell 64% in May, could take longer.
Car sales fell by almost 31% in June. It's a massive decline. However, finance institutions say that this decline is unlikely to continue as they're seeing more applications for finance this year than they did last year.
People are buying used cars because you can get a better deal for the money and potentially pay less for a used car. What the dealerships are doing, and those that are succeeding during the lockdown and during this time, is employing strategies that are referred to as automotive digital retailing. They're upgrading their websites, putting in place technology so that consumers that are buying cars can not only apply for finance, but actually go through the journey of getting finance for the car.
The demand for new vehicles is improving. Vehicle prices rose above inflation for the first time since 2017. June consumer inflation rose 2.2%, while vehicle inflation rose 6.5%. Sumitra Nadu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's shift focus now. Gold prices have recorded an all-time high, trading above $2,000 per ounce before settling just below this peak. Now, fears of an economic fallout from the rise in coronavirus cases has boosted demand for the precious metal. But of course, gains were capped by an upward trend in the US dollar today. Spot gold was steady at $1,973 per ounce by early morning trading. That's after hitting a record high of $1,984 per ounce in early Asian trading. Now, US gold futures also rising 0.3% to $1,992 per ounce. Of course, tensions between China and the United States have also dented hopes for a swift economic recovery, and that's driving inflows into safe haven assets such as gold. Now, the coronavirus pandemic is dragging down global sales of bottled water. Giants of the industry in the US, Danone and Nestle, both reported sharp drops in sales for the second quarter. Here's Giles Gibson reporting from Washington.
There's plenty of water on these supermarket shelves, but some of the world's biggest brands are watching their sales dry up. This week, Danone, which owns Evian and some other popular brands, reported a nearly 6% drop in sales for the second quarter. Its competitor Nestle is already considering selling its North American water business. Some smaller distributors have bucked the trend, though, benefiting from higher sales in the spring when Americans stockpiled food and water for coronavirus lockdowns.
End of February till basically the end of March, it was a complete drop. You saw maybe 10, 20 sales in that time frame. We're like, oh no, what are we going to do? And then people they're like, oh, I just found your site. And they started, and we've increased over 75% online.
Even so, coronavirus restrictions have changed customer behaviors, and that's impacting sales figures for bigger brands.
It's Friday afternoon, and this metro station here in downtown Washington is completely dead. With people not commuting every day, they're less likely to buy a snack or a bottle of water on the go.
Before the coronavirus pandemic struck, there were already signs of flattening demand. Environmental campaigners have been condemning single-use plastics for years. A new study says 40% of it ends up in the environment. That's why campaigners are now comparing the bottled water industry to big tobacco.
My personal decision to use a single-use plastic item of any type, water bottle, plastic bag, is actually now causing an impact on the greater environment around me and therefore affecting other people's health. So my decision is no longer just impacting mine, it's impacting others. Just like if I decide to make the personal choice to smoke, the smoking impacts those around me.
For now, coronavirus restrictions seem to be hurting the business more than environmental concerns. If people are staying at home and going out less, they won't be ordering a bottle of water for the table. Giles Gibson for CGTN, Washington.
Well, that is all for now on Africa Live Biz, but coming up later on Global Business Africa, Egypt reports its best level of inflation in 14 years. We'll take a look at how the government has achieved this. Of course, all that coming up top of the hour. For now, it is back to you, Peninah.
Thank you, Uche. You're watching Africa Live, still ahead. We look at the amazing treasures from ancient Africa in a new special series, Made in Africa.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panata, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years.
My dream is to be the leading player in Africa in spice sector.
Nobody in the region consumes it. Even me cannot afford the vanilla cooking.
What we've created here is the elegance, the color, the celebration of life.
Benin bronzes looted in 1897 when the British invaded the Kingdom of Benin, which is now in southern Nigeria, are considered some of Africa's greatest treasures. The craftsmen of Benin are keen to keep the tradition of bronze casting alive. For them, it's a way of life and a way to preserve their heritage for future generations. In the first installment of our special series, we bring you the story of one such artist whose family is associated with these ancient artwork in the past 600 years.
For me, bronze casting is a way of life, and we are the one keeping those heritage, because we grow up and we see what our ancestors have done, and to keep it alive, we have to follow suit so that our oncoming children or generation will see what our ancestors have done. I'm Fred Ebuwa. I'm a bronze caster. I'm from Benin, the home of bronze. My family has been doing this artwork for the past 600 years. Right from the time of Obaewaye, it was not making money business. It was only to worship the Oba, to keep events. That's how they were doing it then, because our ancestors then, they wasn't selling it. It had been taken to the palace and to some high-ranking chiefs as a souvenir, as a gift. In our ancestor days, it was just to keep an history, to keep events. Since the ancient Benin, there wasn't writing. They only give mark that so and so time this thing happened. Then the best way to preserve those history was through bronze casting. As for me, I will call myself a craftsman because my ancestors, they were all craftsmen, not an artist. Everything a craftsman does is in his head. You don't need to draw. That's why if you see most craftsmen, they took time to observe things. Like me now, I'll be looking at the shape of my hand. I look at the shape of my hand. Why am I looking at it? If you ask me to mold a hand now, I don't need a sketch of a hand. I just memorize that which I have seen. I'll begin to mold. Today I will show you the process of how to cast a bronze. I'm going to make an abstract of an Oba head right from the very first stage through the wax process before casting. This is the very first beginning of how to do bronze casting. First and foremost, you have to mold with the wax. Okay, we are done with the wax modeling. We are moved to the next stage of which is casting. This is the second stage after modeling. We have to cover with the red sand. Now, I'm prepared to bake. Like in the next 2-3 hours, it should be ready for casting. I've just set the furnace to melt the bronze. In 2 hours, all will be liquid. Now, it shows that the brass are fully melted. Once the brass are fully melted, it has a flame on it. And now, we are going to bring out what we are going to cast now. I'm doing the casting now. Aha. Now the bronze has been casted, and we need time for it to cool off so that we can break off the red sand from it. Now it has cooled down. We want to break and take to the next process, that which is filing. After this stage now, we file. Where we are now is like everyone is really struggling with the street. But if there is a support, I think this young one now, they can do better than what our forefather did. But the government, they are not supportive. Because everybody that is doing this craft is just on his own. We hear that the UN people are sponsoring it so that the thing will not die. But none of those things comes to the craftsmen. For the fact that the government is not supporting, everybody is just trying to survive. That's even the reason you are not seeing the best of our artworks now. Because there are bills to pay, there are things to run. If one is bothered or troubled, you cannot see the best of him. But when one is relaxed, I promise you, anytime he brings us a particular art, it will be a masterpiece. Here we go, it's ready. My message to the world is that whosoever that want to keep this heritage should come down to this very place and see for himself.
Coming up in sports news.